everybody. As you can see, I've got the tie on again. We've got the top hollow music playing in the background. You know what that means. It's time for some more Pokemon Sleep news. Now, as you can see, new Pokemon, Drifblim, Drifloon. It's pretty cool. This was kind of teased, actually, in the announcement for the Old Gold Power Plant. If you were really paying attention, if you looked at in the background of the Old Gold Power Plant, there were balloons, and I remember seeing people talking and like theorizing, oh, maybe the balloons mean Drifloon, Drifblim. They thought it was like a teaser for what was coming up in Halloween, but they were wrong, because it wasn't a teaser for what was coming up in Halloween. It was a teaser for what was coming up in literally at Old Gold Power Plant. It was going to be shadow dropped. You heard that right. They shadow dropped something. This is brand new. It's the first time they've done this sort of thing. As you can see, there's an announcement here now after everyone's already kind of figured it out. But originally, this was just a casual update. I actually, when I updated the app, I caught it on camera, and it was in my daily journal series from yesterday. So I didn't realize that was an update to add new Pokemon because they didn't say anything about it. I thought it was just bug fixes. But yeah, they added Drifblim and Drifloon. Now, what are these new Pokemon? And I do want to get actually into, I really like that they're doing a shadow drop, because that means there's now a precedent that shadow drops can happen, which I've been asking for that for the longest time. I thought shadow drops would be just the coolest thing, to just wake up the next morning and whoa, this Pokemon's in the game? Like, I thought that'd be awesome. They're doing that now. They've done it once. Now this one's kind of an allusion to some interesting things, like why on a Friday at... Because, like, the first people to see it saw it on Friday at 4 a.m. Now, if you know anything about Pokemon's history, Drifloon is kind of known as, in the base games, as you can see here, it only ever really appears on Fridays during the day. It's got like a very special clock timer thing, so as an allusion to that, they made it that it first appeared on a Friday morning. I still can't see it. It's not 4 a.m. Friday morning here where I live yet, but I've seen people posting about it, seen people talking about it. But yeah, it's pretty cool. Now, what does this new Pokemon do? Here's where the discussion gets pretty complicated, and where you'll see why it's taken me so long to make this video. Because this guy, there's a lot of interesting math going behind whether or not it'll be relevant. Now, it is a skill specialist with Charge Strength S, a new Charge Strength S variant, which is very interesting. Stockpile. What does it do? Basically, the whole concept behind Stockpile is that every time it just like slowly, it'll either stockpile or it'll spit up every time that it procs. If it chooses to stockpile, then it adds another counter to the value, the stockpile value, and if it chooses to spit up, then it gives back an amount of strength to Snorlax equal to a set value based off how many stockpiles it gets. So the whole idea is, the longer it goes without spitting up, the more value that the procs have. Now, what's really interesting though is, I've done a little bit of math, and it doesn't quite work out that way. It does for really high values, but if you look at here, if we just look at the... Well, we'll go off a bit level 7, because that's the optimal usage. Level 7. 4502 at 0, 7653 at level 1, or just 1 stockpile. The thing is, to get 1 stockpile, you need to have 1 stockpile and 1 spit up. That's 2 procs. And notably, 4502 doubled is 9004, which is more than 7653. So you're going to get greater value from 2 procs of spit up on 0 than you are of 1 proc of each, or like a proc of stockpile and then a proc of spit up. And the math kind of works out that way, that at this level, if you really do the math on it, it doesn't actually pay to be stockpiling until it stockpiles 7 before spitting up. So all these levels in between here, it would have been mathematically better for it to just spit up every single time. So it's kind of weird because you'd expect that more stockpiles would always just give better returns. I would have expected this number to be like 10,000, because if it was 10,000, then it's going to be better because it stockpiled one and then spit up 10,000. That's a value of 5,000 per proc versus a value of 4,500. That makes logical sense for the way the skill is supposed to be designed. But for some reason, they made the 0 proc weaker or stronger than all the way up through 6 procs, which I just find bizarre because this number used to be divided by 7. It comes out to be less than this number, so it's just kind of weird. But then the real question is this guy going to compete in the meta with other charge strength Pokemon? Because there's going to be a lot of cost, a lot of this guy's going to have a lot less flexibility than what other Pokemon in the meta right now are going to have. Golduck, you can put him on your team for like an hour. You get a proc, probably. And then he's good. This guy, though, Drifloon, well, you're going to have to keep him on your team until he spits up in order to get the best value out of him. And that's really... It holds back his flexibility because we assume that the spit up, the stockpile counter probably resets when swapping him off the team. So putting Drifloon on your team is going to be a huge commitment. So I would expect there to be some sort of like higher value to get out of this skill than other skills in the game. But the thing is, the numbers that they've given here, I don't expect that it's really going to be worth the commitment that Drifloon is, unless you just really like to gamble. If you like to gamble, then this is going to be a great Pokemon for you because, man, it's going to just have some really big hits that are going to be really, really satisfying. Even if it is suboptimal, the ability to gamble is always fun. I think that's why a lot of fairy-based teams are huge right now. Or not necessarily huge, but there are some people that really like fairy-based teams because Togekiss is just the definition of gambling. But I've run a little bit of math, and so as of right now, they predict his proc rate to be around 6.26%. This is unsettled. I am putting a heavy asterisk here of this is unsettled, because this number could be different. If it is different, then all the math, all the numbers that I'm going to show you, well, not all the numbers, but a lot of the numbers that I'm going to show you of like the final estimates are going to be different than what it would be if this is accurate. But this is, I found in the past that these numbers are usually decent rough estimates. Usually you can get a decent idea of how they are as long as it's not within the first couple hours after Pokemon's release. And it's been, well, it's almost been a day since this guy's out. So, and a lot of people have gotten a lot of hype out of him. So I'm expecting this number to be probably plus or minus 25% of its estimate. If it's higher, then some of the numbers that I can show you will be different. But overall, Golduck and Ampharos, we can see that they proc around 24,300 value per day. And I'm just keeping them all the same. No subskills, no nature, modifying them, all mono list. Just for the sake of like having a baseline. Because this is just to get rough estimates of like what it'll take. 24,300 is about the value we expect per day from level 7 main skills off of these guys. Now, with this estimate for proc rate and speed, which speed we know is true. That's a data mineable thing. That is fixed. But this number, with this estimate, it's going to proc about 4.53 times a day. And I've done the math here. As you can see, if I take that 24,380 from the Golduck, divide that by 4.53, it's going to need an average proc value of about 5,300 to 5,400, 53 to 5,400. And now, here's where I'm going to probably lose a bunch of you. I am a spreadsheet nerd. I've made these spreadsheets. I've made them in the past. I'll link them in the description so you can check them out yourself. But, and really just plug in the numbers to, if you want to futz around with it, you can futz around with it. But this table here, and I'll try to explain kind of what it is. This table right here is the proc per value for 1 to 10, or 0 to 10 before spit up. And then for, oh, whoops. It's from levels 1 through 7 to get an idea of things. This over here is the chance that does 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, based off of the odds that you input. So this is basically a big calculator. Down here is the average value. So here's where I said it's this number divided by 1 because it took 1 proc to get 4502. And then here's the 2, this number divided by 2, this number divided by 3 gets me this. So this is a table of the value per proc for that number of stockpiles before spit up. And as you can see, the 4502 as the benchmark. Like I said before, 7 is the threshold where it becomes better to stockpile versus spit up for the first one. However, after it stockpiles 1, every stockpile is better. But if it's 0, if it was before 7, then just spitting up every time is better. Now, down here is where it gets more convoluted. This is the odds that that number procs, so gotten from here, times that number's average value per thing to give me a comprehensive average value per proc after taking into account all of this. And as you can see here, I put in 10%. Now, this is a bit of an interesting situation because for this calculation, I've assumed that if it goes up to 10, then the 11th proc is going to be a spit up. I don't know if that's the way it's coded yet or not. I've asked Raynon. I've asked the Raynon X server to see if anybody knows, and they said it's too hard to say right now. Nobody's had any experimental data. So this is all very preliminary, but I just wanted to come up with a couple possible different ways of how it could function. If it functions this way, that it's a, let's say, 10% chance every time that it procs, and then on the 11th proc, if it hasn't given a spit up yet, then it's guaranteed. Then with a 10% chance, as we can tell by that metric of 5382, then it's actually, it's meta-relevant based off our current estimates. So if it is this circumstance, then it is very meta-relevant. If it is down to 9%, as you can see, the lower it gets, the better the odds get, because then it just puts more likelihood of getting this 10 stockpiles, which is huge. So I think 10 is a balanced number for it, because that's almost right on the number that Ampharos and Golduck are. And given that it's available as early as Greengrass, which, as you can see here, it's appearing at Greengrass and Old Gold Power Plant. Given that it's available as early as Greengrass, I don't expect this to be a power creep. If it was only at Old Gold, I would expect it to maybe be a little bit higher in expected value per day, just because it's available at a later island. But given that it's available as early as Greengrass for the duration of its life right now, it appears that it probably should be balanced. And given that, this is the way I expect it to function. I don't know if that's the way it's going to function, for sure. I don't expect this to be lower than 10%, because 10% is a nice, even number. It's what I would kind of think they would do, especially like, 1 in 10 procs gives it that. But I wanted to see, what if it functioned a little bit differently? What if instead, there is no limitation saying, after 10 procs, it is guaranteed to spit up? Well, this required 2 huge spreadsheets, where basically, as you can see here, I gave the value of every single one after 10 to be the same as 10, and then calculated their percent chance of being rolled, as well as the value of those respective percentages in this table. And I just went all the way up to 100. Realistically, you're never really going to get 100 stockpiles in a single week because of A, probability, and B, I don't even think there's long enough in a week to get 100 procs off the same Pokemon. So these numbers down here are just really absurd. But I just really wanted to go out to 100 because, once again, nice numbers. Spreadsheets make it easy to do math to that great extent. So, and then I used that to calculate in here the value per proc to get an average value for each skill level. And the best number that I could give it, basically, the higher this number is, the less likely it is to reach that level 10, so the numbers get lower across the board. And the lower this number is, the more likely it is to go beyond 10 and start wasting procs. And given that, there's actually a balancing game here, and out of all the numbers, I was just kind of futzing around testing with this number. The best number that I could find was 12.15%. As you can see, if I do like 13%, this number is currently 44.91. If I do 13%, it goes down to 44.88. If I do 12% even instead of 12.15, it's 4491.7 versus the 12.15 is 4491.8. Granted, that's a very minor difference, but it's a difference nonetheless, and this seems to be the best number for the way this works. And given that, if this is the case, I don't think it's ever going to be meta relevant, because that is way behind. That is way behind the Ampharos and the Golduck for output. And just given how much cost is going into running this guy and using it for its main skill, given that you have to really commit to keeping him on the team for a really long time until you get that spit up proc, if it's weaker than the others, it's never going to be meta relevant, other than for people who just want to run Drifloon. So I am so hopeful that this is not the way they coded him, because if they did, they really don't want him to be useful. Now, there's a third option that I didn't discuss with the other ones, and that is, what if instead of just rolling every time, like just rolling the dice, is it going to proc or not proc? What if at the time that it spits up, it picks a number 0 through 10, and then says, after this many procs, then the next one is a spit up. Then all numbers 0 through 10 have equal likelihood of being chosen, and it's no longer a weird probability thing. So I just put in the same table, and then divide each number by 11, and divide by how many procs it took to get that, to get the average value of a proc with this. And here's the value of, if it functions this way, each level, which, as you can see, that comes to 4,686. That is still significantly less than the 4,380 or 5,382 that I calculated before. If it functions this way, this also is not meta relevant. Plain and simple. Unless they give this guy, unless this guy has a higher proc rate than this. But he's got potential if he works this way. In fact, I personally would like to see him a little better than the others, since he is so much of a commitment, rather than having that flexibility. So, like, I wouldn't even be opposed to, like, 7%. Because this is, like, yeah, that's higher than the 5382, but, like I said, you're committing to running Drifblim, or Drifloon. Drifblim? I don't know. You're committing to running him for a much longer period of time. You have to run him through the night, most likely, if you want to keep saving those procs. Because this whole idea hinges on the idea of getting those 10 procs. And if you look at that, I mean, if you take a good Drifblim with current estimates, give it Help Speed M, Skill Trigger M, and Skill Trigger S, the best possible. Well, let's make the best possible here. Main skill chance up, ingredient finding down. It's procking 8 times a day. That's more than a day's worth of procs before you get it, because you need 11 procs. So it's just, and that's the best possible one I could create, off the top of my head. So I don't know. I'm hoping they give him a number around 7%, maybe 8%, 9, 10 at the highest. 10 if they want him to be perfectly balanced, but even if he's perfectly balanced, I don't think he's going to be perfectly balanced, because he just takes more dedication than the others. But yeah, this has been kind of a bit of an analysis of if this guy is going to be good or not. We still don't know his ingredient rate, but I don't really care too much about his ingredients. He's not an ingredient specialist, so I'll go over his ingredient rates when I get around to him in my Pokemon review series, which I'm still working through. But I'm excited to see him Shadow Drop. Honestly, that's the thing that I'm the most excited about with this update, with their new arrival, is just the fact that it was a Shadow Drop. because I'm hoping that sets a precedence for more shadow drops in the future, because it is fun. I think this is fun. It's probably not fun for the data miners who love to ready themselves up, and the minute that there's new data to start practicing and get it all in and tell the community what's going on, but I think this is cool. If you do too, leave a comment about it if you agree with me. If you liked the video, found it informative and interesting, leave a like, subscribe. Thank you all for watching. Bye.